Are you pretty disciplined with your writing?
I do not like to waste time. I mean, I used to. I used to like procrastinate. I used to sit down. When Chris and I would write together, Chris and I used to literally goof off for 6 hours. And then the last 45 minutes, we'd do our work. I used to do everything I could to not write. Now, when Chris and I work together, we start and we go. We just, until we're done. And then we might goof off afterward. When I get to my office, I do whatever little things I need to do to kind of get my head together to write. Sometimes I might sit and close my eyes for a little while and just try to get into a little bit of a deeper headspace, or just kind of go take my notes and sit down at a coffee shop and just kind of think about what I'm about to do. But I do not like to waste any time anymore. I just don't have the time in my life, frankly. I've got too many things that are important to me, you know, my family and, you know, just staying healthy and, you know.
Do you have like a goal for like page count?
I find it to be arbitrary, but I do find some arbitrary goals helpful. I want to get to this part. I want to get through this scene. I want to get, sometimes it might be a page, like to get 10 pages done or 3 pages done or whatever. All those rules about screenwriting, I find only helpful now and only screwed me up earlier. What happens is with beginning writers is they hear these rules. By page 10, something's supposed to happen. I don't know what it is, but I know something is. And then there's a something that happens. And then there's something called an inciting incident, or maybe that's what happens on page 10. I have no idea. But the point is, your movie has to be interesting. It has to be not boring. If it's a comedy, it has to be funny. If it's a drama, it has to be dramatic. If it's a thriller, it has to be thrilling. If it's a suspense, it has to be suspenseful. I mean, you know, it's like, it's got to be good. It's got to be well told, and it's got to work within its own self. However, when you sit down and go, okay, I'm now going to write a screenplay. By page 30, this has to happen. Well, you know what? That's not how it happens organically, you know? That's not how you write. You don't block something out, and then, you know, then it just comes to that page, and then by page 45, this happens. And the problem with all these screenwriting books, most of which are written by people who are good teachers and who do know what they're talking about, but the problem is, they screw up more people than they help. But I think it's like anything. There's almost everything, I think, is misused most of the time. You know, whether it's sugar or guns or whatever, you know, they're misused. And only if you really know what you're doing with something, I think, can you use them. And I think these rules are the same way. You need to know when and why they apply. But the problem is when you first start out, you don't. You know, for instance, you can get to a great script only beginning with dialogue. You might just hear some dialogue, and then you might start, you know, you might from the dialogue clone a character. And that character might have a sense of movement to it. And then that movement starts to tell you what a story might be. And then that tells you what an obstacle or an antagonist might be. And then there's some conflict. And then suddenly you get something else, some other idea. Oh, wait, what if I move this into the world of advertising? And then you get an image in your head. What if there's a bunch of, you know, whatever, he's selling all the, you know. And what starts to happen is you start to put together something, and it starts to form. And then you might start structuring it.
Do you beat out much of an outline? I mean,
I beat out an outline a lot sometimes and not a lot sometimes. Tokyo Sucker Punch, I outlined like crazy and may have outlined too much, but the reason I outlined it was there were 2 mysteries going on. There was a whodunit mystery, and then there was another mystery, which was, is there something surreal going on here as well? And in order to make that all work, I needed to know exactly where I wanted to be at each time. Where that screwed me up was, as I started writing, the character was so alive for me. And the character was a character I really loved writing for, and I really like writing for Toby and for this character that Toby and I have sort of conceived him to be. The character started to surprise me because he was so alive, and it screwed up my whole structure. So I had to kind of restructure. So then the process became sort of like throwing out fishing line or something, or throwing out track, like throwing train track out ahead of you. That's what it became like for me. It became, okay, pulling that outline away, and now it's over here, and then re-outlining, and, you know, everything's different. Chris and I are writing something together, and we're going to outline pretty well, I think, but we're also going to be pretty loose with it. I'm outlining something else, and by outlining, there's just a comedy that I want to write at some point. By outlining, what I mean is the beginning, I kind of know what it is very well, but the middle, it's about these guys who do end up kind of getting lost, and one guy gets really just kind of unravels, and the other guy actually kind of puts himself together in a certain way. I don't know how to outline that. To me, my outline, and I've done an outline, and what I've outlined is specifically the first sequence, how you meet one guy, you meet the other guy, you know, how they end up coming together, how they end up going on this place going to this place together, getting lost, and then literally there's going to be 40 pages of stuff, you know, where I just know that I want them to get to here, and then I want them to get to here because I know how I want it to end. Now, I may get to here, and this whole end may change. The skill to me is knowing when to outline, when to follow the outline, and when to not, you know. That to me is the magic, you know. Anyone can go, you know, introduction, normal world, whatever it is, and start to sort of plot out a script, you know, a story. You know, how rigid are you going to be? How much are you going to allow your story to collaborate with you? How much give and take? And I think the best analogy I can use is it's like having a kid, you know. In my head, I thought having a son was going to mean something that probably I got as a kid, being a son to someone. I had a son, and he was not what I had thought, you know, I don't know, for whatever reason, he liked things I didn't like, and he didn't like things I liked, and that was him. So what do you do?
And you got very angry.
I got angry, I hit him, I beat him, and ultimately No, this is okay. This is important for people to know. Ultimately, he submitted, and he's the son I wanted.
Right.
Now, I happen to want a son with a lot of emotional problems.
That's right.
Cowering, kind of quivering, never going to surpass me in life.
Good.
That's what I know, and I'm healthy enough to know that'll make me feel good about myself. So I think the first thing I would say is beat your son and your script into submission, and you'll get what you want.
Well, I
think that's good.
That's worth the price of admission right there.
Yeah. No, anyway, what I was going to say was, I think, you know, so this child arrives, and you go, you don't say, what I want this child to be. You say, who is this child sort of becoming? And how do I, as a parent, make this child, or really not even make this child anything, clear a space and guide this child into a more fully realized version of himself or herself? And I think the script is kind of like that. It's like, I have this idea. I think it's going to be this. What is it becoming as I start to write it? Well, it's sort of changing. How do you know when to stay with your original impulse and when to allow it to change? How do you know that's smart? And when I first would write, it would terrify me when it would start to change. And I try to will it back into what I thought it was going to be. And then you end up with something that's really feels forced and right. Fake. But then you go the other extreme, which is you just sort of let it go free form. Oh, I'm just expressing myself. Isn't this beautiful? I'm an artist. That's just, oh, this is great. It's fantastic. I wrote it in a week, and it's, you know, and it's just a bunch of self-indulgent crap because it's formless and it's got flights of loveliness, but in fact, it's crappy. Right. So it's all about that dance, you know.
We have a little screenwriting exercise for you. We call it the object. Frederick, the tray, please. Oh. Frederick here is going to present you with an object that is random to you. The idea is that when Frederick reveals the object, you take your time with it. You can touch it, look at it. You can either talk out your ideas, do it internally, and just build a story around it, character, a plot, whatever comes to mind. Frederick, please.
Your object, sir.
Thank you, Frederick.
Thank you, Frederick, for the Wonder Woman Pez container. Now, this part of me wants to just come up with a bunch of jokes about the Pez container, and part of me wants to take the Pez container and ram it down your throat.
Can I say something here?
Sure.
Let's go with the first option.
I can't remember which was first.
The first one was
I think
the
you're talking
jokes.
about the one down the throat.
No, the first one's the jokes, and
okay. But I mean that in an affectionate way, as you know. What it makes me think, years ago, you know, I thought to myself, you know, I'd like to be a writer. I don't know if I'll ever actually be able to make a living as a writer. So in college, I decided to be an economics major because I thought that would be, you know, something I could fall back on. And I studied economics, but by mid-UCLA, I kind of thought I want to be a writer. I still didn't know if I'd actually be a successful writer or not. But I chose to really pursue it, you know. And my parents were supportive enough, and there were times when things didn't go that well. But I got a, you know, I'm a writer now, and I have family, and I make my living as a writer, which makes me very, very proud. And yet, it all leads to this moment where I'm given a Pez container by a guy in a tux and asked with 4 cameras to come up with something about a Pez container. And what I think is, I wonder if I should have stayed with economics. Because I don't think anything on that path would make me as uncomfortable as having to sort of be witty about a fucking Pez container.
Well, where do you find inspiration? Like, if you're looking for a scene, like a detail, a character trait, something like that, where do you look for inspiration?
I think you can get inspiration from anything, you know? I mean, I think you can have some story that you've been wanting to tell for a long time, and for whatever reason, it's, you know, it's an actual story. I met this person, and she changed my life by doing this, and I really want to tell that story. Or you can have a lot of ideas that you don't really understand or have never really articulated, feelings of something you don't even know you feel, and then you see the slightest thing, and it, you know, and it, little image of something, and it can like resonate with you.
Do you ever go in search of things like that, or is it more being receptive?
I used to go in search of things when I first started, and it, you know, like when I was writing jokes and stuff for people, it'd be like I'd walk around with a notebook, and like literally anything people said, you know. Or when I first started writing, I would actually, like, it'd be a, you know, do you want fries with that? Do I want fries? A guy wants fries. He wonders, does he want fries? I don't know, you know. I mean, everything. I was out looking. But ultimately, you sort of go, you know, whatever it is, it comes to you whenever you're ready or not ready. But it just kind of, you know, you get an idea, and sometimes you're in the mood to turn something into something longer, so you think, oh, let me see if I can make that work. Ultimately, at least when you've been doing it as long as I have, you have a whole bunch of ideas that are not really realized, you know. This idea, that idea, this idea, that idea. And then you have some time and you think about it and see if it expands, and then gradually it gets a kind of critical mass and like, wow, there's something that I want to complete. Or sometimes it's like with Levity, I'll just hit it this way, hit it this way, hit it this way, then finally it opens up.
Right.
And then you go.
With something like Men in Black, like, you had to use a lot of invention, you know, gadgets and aliens and things like that. Did a lot of that come from the graphic novels, or did you invent a lot of it, and how did you approach?
What was in the graphic novel was 2 guys, and they, I don't remember too much about it, but they worked for an organization. They were called Men in Black, and they dealt with demons and like a whole bunch of stuff. And there was a discussion relatively early on about whether it should be a comedy or not. And I remember that people said that, there were some people, not everyone, who said it should be a drama. And I remember saying, look, this isn't the kind of science fiction that will warrant drama. It needs the kind of leap of faith that you can make with comedy. When something is comedic, you're in a kind of mood where certain things will work or not work. And depending on the comedy, you're in a different kind of mood depending on the comedy. This needed a kind of twisted, kind of adventuresome, generous, but sort of cool feeling, so that it's like you will be in the right mood for these weird ideas in a way. If you tried to tell Men in Black seriously,
it's hard to imagine.
Yeah, it wouldn't work. It would fall flat. So, I mean, the main thing for Men in Black that if I added anything to it, I think would be the worldview, which was aliens live among us, which I don't think was within the original material. The idea that it's comedic. I mean, there was no story or anything to the comics at all, you know, obviously. But I think it's a worldview, an attitude.
Were you offered the sequel to that?
No, I was not offered the sequel, nor do I think they wanted me to do the sequel. I'm not sure I would have been able to do it anyway. I think.
I mean, would you have, if you were available to do it, would you have written the sequel?
I don't know. I worked for 4 years on the first one.
Really? Okay.
And yeah, on and off. I mean, there's probably 25 different drafts of that movie. Some very different, and some just kind of honing of the same.
Right.
You know, finally. But unlike Bill and Ted, which Chris and I wrote and was our own idea, and then we wrote the sequel to, Men in Black was a juggernaut. You know, although my profit statements show that it's still in the red.
That's right. That's the classic example everyone uses. That
but they made
never
a sequel.
Made any money.
They made a sequel which proves they're in it for the art and not the commerce.
Right.
So I'm
more of the story to be told.
That's right. I think they all felt that.
Do you take rewriting assignments?
Yeah, on occasion. I won't rewrite someone unless they give me permission to. I won't rewrite.
Is there a protocol to it, you think?
Well, I don't know if there's a real protocol, but I would never be comfortable rewriting someone who didn't want to be rewritten. And I have not taken jobs where a writer's not wanted.
Does any writer want to be rewritten? I mean,
sometimes they want to be, or sometimes they go like, you know what, I'm tapped out. Or sometimes they'll say, look, I don't want to be rewritten, but it's going to happen. You know, but what I'm talking about is I won't rewrite someone who really doesn't want me to do it. You know, it's just not worth it for me. It's not. I don't want to do that to someone's work. But most of the time when it gets to a situation where they're asking you to rewrite, usually the writer knows. So just by calling the writer, they usually feel more comfortable with having me do it, because I say to them usually, you know, this is what I'm thinking of doing. What were you setting out to do? You know, I mean, do you, you know, I hope, you know, and I really do. I try to honor the work they've done ahead of me.
When you come on a rewriting assignment, is it typically to do something specific to it?
Sometimes it's because the third act isn't working, or this character isn't quite right, or they've changed actors, or, you know, there's always a reason. And often it's like carpentry, when you've ever had someone come to your house to do, you know, work on the house, or if you do work on your house, you know, it's like, well, you pull out the floorboard and they go, oh, there's something else that's not quite right, you know, and then it's, that's often the case.
So you've written for specific actors?
I've many times written for actors.
Can you give an example and what that's like?
Sure. You know, what happens is a new actor comes on the movie, which may change the nature of the entire film. The original writer may not be available, may not be interested in doing the rewrite, or for reasons the studio may not want them for some reason. Or the star for some reason wants you know, or something like that.
Did that happen with Gary Shandling on...
What Planet Are You From?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, I came in, I only did one draft, an interim draft, you know, for Gary on What Planet Are You From? And then Gary rewrote with Peter Tolan. And so, again, that was a movie where I added a little, but not a lot. I don't even really remember what I added. Again, there's this thing that, it's a weird thing to say, but there's a lot of movies that I have my name on where I really did some work on, but I really wasn't the final arbiter of what ended up on screen, nor was the movie really performed in the way I would have necessarily. I'm not talking about What Planet Are You From, but other movies performed in a way that I would have intended it to be. So, you know, there's this guy, me, doing my work all day, and then there's like some guy who has my list of credits, you know, who, whoever that guy is, I don't even know, you know, but yeah. It's just a weird thing when people attribute stuff to me because I'm credited on a certain film that I really don't feel like
You don't feel a connection to?
No, but I mean, you take any line of from any, I mean, can you name a line from a play that you like or don't like? It doesn't matter. Anything, a famous line of any kind, to be or not to be, whatever. And just change one word. And it's different, Should I be or should I not be? We thought it was better, should I be? To be or not to be was confusing. So we made it, should I be or should I not be? Well, okay, great, It's still yours, though.
No, it isn't, right.
Yeah, it's not really.
If you could give really concrete advice about how to write a script to someone you were mentoring or someone who came to you with questions, can you think of the best piece of advice or insight or pieces of advice that you've picked up in all the years you've worked?
I read a book by Anne Lamott called Bird by Bird, and she gives some great advice in that book, I thought. She talks about, I think it was her brother trying to complete a paper, and he was just about birds, and he was just frozen. I think he let it go to the last minute or something. He was frozen and he couldn't do it, and couldn't get anything out. And her father came down to the kitchen or wherever he was sitting and just sort of patted him on the shoulder and said, "Bird by bird, buddy, bird by bird," And I think that's, to me, the best advice that I heard, which I didn't hear it, I just read it, and anyone could read it. It's a good book, people should read it. It can feel so overwhelming, the need to create the magnum opus immediately, or the need to get out of this apartment, and sell a screenplay. It was selling a screenplay is gonna be my ticket out. The need for that jerk who wouldn't go out with me, in high school to think I'm meaningful, I'm gonna write that story and show him or show her, you know what I mean? The need to express yourself so profoundly that people will finally get you. The need to be seen as a success. Whatever it is that's sort of making you think this thing has to be amazing, that's gonna, that's too much weight for these little delicate things to sustain. And I think you just try to construct something that works for you, that's interesting, genuinely interesting for you, that isn't the greatest thing ever written, but works.
Well, that's excellent advice. I mean, what's next for you?
I'm going to finish a couple of the studio jobs that I'm doing, the Tokyo Sucker Punch job. There's a script called Barnaby that I've been working on and off for the last...
Barnaby or Barnaby?
Barnaby. Working on and off for the last 10, 12 years. Original draft by a guy named Howard Rodman, who's a wonderful writer. And he and I have sort of worked in a serial collaboration, as we refer to it. And I'm starting a comedy with Chris Matheson. He and I are writing a movie for one of the studios. And then I want to write something for myself to direct, a comedy. That I have the idea in my mind, and I'm sort of noodling on it a bit here and there.
Good luck with all that, Ed.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for being here.
Sure.
Pleasure.
My pleasure.
I want to thank writer and director Ed Solomon for being here. Thank you for watching as well. Remember to check out the other great interviews with industry pros in our series. And remember, it all starts with you. The next Written By credit could be yours. I'm Jay Fernandez.